Good morning, YouTube. This here's Ken Lynch, and I'm talking to you today about hot pepper growing. So I got my little garden here. Put up a little $200 greenhouse. It's amazing what you can get for, what, 230 bucks. It's 26 foot long, 10 foot wide about. And what I do is I got it nestled here amongst these trees because here in Pennsylvania we get some crazy winds. So listen to some guy on YouTube talk about how to bolster this thing up, and so I got 2-foot stakes in here holding this whole thing down, and hopefully it'll last the whole winter. And I've seen a lot of people get these things destroyed in the windstorms and the rainstorms. As you can see, I've tried to bulk it up so that way I can not have the rain settle in on it like it did to so many other people, because once about 200 pounds of rain gets on the top of this thing, it crushes. So it's about 60 degrees here, and so I got this thing closed but the windows open because it can get to be crazy hot. So let's get on inside and see what we got going on in here. So as you can tell, I'm right here in the beginning of the season, May 25th, so I do have to put some of my seeds in my beds. What I've been doing here is I've been sifting out some of my soil and separating out the rock, and then adding in some perlite and some peat moss and some worm castings and some manure and some garden soil, and putting them all together, and that's what I got my stuff in. So over the winter time I started growing these hot pepper seeds. And so we got some habaneros, some red habaneros, some Carolina Reapers. Actually, the Carolina Reapers were the first ones I wanted to get going. So starting in December of last year, that's how long that guy's been running. It took about a month for those seeds to even germinate. But now I got, what, 35 happy little plants here. And I'm feeding them the Maxi Grow 10-5-14 from General Hydroponics. And I just put in 2 teaspoons of that in a gallon of water. And the reason why I got all these little water vessels here is because on cold nights, what it does is it creates thermal mass. I was thinking about maybe even getting a whole bunch of these guys here, because what happens is during the daytime when it's all nice and warm, it will absorb the heat, and then at nighttime when it gets down to 40, 30, whatever, it'll give up the heat. But right now, what is the temperature in here? So it's 76 degrees inside here. It's 61 degrees outside. And you see that my max was 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and my min was 44. So you see we got quite a big spread even inside here. So at the very least, we're not letting these guys get killed by the frost. They don't seem to be getting killed by the frost. So you see I got some nice little flowers on there, and these guys are self-pollinating, or so they say. And I've dropped flowers, I've trimmed these things back, I've made it so that way they'll grow bigger and bushier, hopefully. I had them all in 1-gallon pots, so started them all off germinating in little tiny pots, and then grew them up to these here 1 gallons. And looks like this little guy here is ready to go up to his next size. Oh boy, I got lots of little flies on here. So this is a jalapeno red, or habanero red? I don't know. So looks like I might have to start spraying these guys with some neem oil out here, because if I got critters all over them, the last thing I want to do is have the critters eat them. And it's weird, I've had varying degrees of success here. As you can see, this little guy here, the Trinidad Scorpion Mustard, is lost all of his leaves. And I was trying not to water them because I was hearing people say, oh, you want to water them as little as possible. So I was just trying to keep it to once a week, these guys here I got in a tray so that way I can bottom water them. But I think outside, the shock from moving from my basement to the greenhouse was a bit much, so I think some of them kind of lost their leaves, but now they're coming back. I can see some sun damage on these guys, so I did try to move them in and out several days, and I planted them out here, I brought them outside on a real overcast week where there was no direct sun for days, and so I was hoping that that would help things along. And then like here's another one, a caramel ghost that's got, looks to be some sun shock on them, but it's so weird because like right next to him is a Trinidad scorpion that has, you know, looks pretty healthy. I can't wait to see some actual peppers from these things, because one thing I've learned about open pollination is that you don't necessarily get what you think you're getting. I know Burpee, was it Burpee? It was there was a big sale on Carolina Reapers, and some of the kids on Facebook are saying that they didn't actually get Carolina Reapers. What they were getting was more like habaneros. Decent spice to it, but you know, when you pay for a Carolina Reaper, you want a Carolina Reaper. So what I did was I bought some bags, some isolation bags, and what you do is once you're sure that you've got a pepper pollinating, you just surround that whole leaf in a bag. There's people on YouTube that talk about this. This is my first year really growing these guys. So it all started about the hot peppers, but as you can see, I'm going on over to, we've got some watermelon seeding here in some Chinese food containers, doing some recycling. Here I got some squash from seed. Over here I got some radish from seed. And as you can see, I started them off on a paper towel in a plastic bag in my basement grow room, where I kept the temperature bottom heat at about 80 degrees. And once they started poking up, I brought them out here, separated out a few of them, and put them into their own pots. These guys, once they get big enough, I'm trying to figure out which one of these two beds I should put them into. So I don't know. I started out only wanting cucumbers, and then when I got this greenhouse, I'm like, you know what, I should probably try to figure out some way to bolster this thing up. So what I did was I screwed all of these beams to this bed, got the bed staked down to the ground, and now I got it full of dirt. So I'm hoping the wind doesn't take this thing away. Speaking of greenhouse improvements, so also to keep the water from pooling in this little section here, this pole here was not part of the original design, so I added it. And then I added some rope to try to keep it from sagging here, because if rain catches into these little pockets here, it'll start to crush the whole thing. So if I can just increase the height, what that'll do is it'll let the rain just slide on over. I know, I'm kind of ADD. Speaking of ADD, I got my oh gosh, what are these things called? Praying mantis eggs. I got one of them in here, and I got four more of them in the garage. And I haven't seen these guys starting to rappel down. I would think that I would find a whole army of them in here, but so far I haven't seen any of them. I mean, I do see ants. So one of the fun ways to get rid of the ants is you throw some diatomaceous earth over the top of the soil and let them drag through it, and that'll knock them out. But neem oil is another thing to apply directly to the leaves to keep things from eating on them, but I don't really see a whole lot of damage. So yeah, after I grew these hot peppers, I decided, you know what, let me start some tomatoes. And then along the way I said, you know what, I have all of this compost, so let me make a worm garden. So I made my own worm garden and did some vermicomposting, and I threw some potatoes in the worm bin, and apparently potatoes don't compost well because they just turned into plants. So that's what all this is. These are the potatoes that I tried to compost, but they turned into plants, and so I moved them out here. So I'm hoping these tomatoes, I got some ugly tomatoes from Harold next door, you know, the big old heirloom tomatoes. I got some cherry tomatoes I'm starting from seed down there, and got some Rome tomatoes and some yellow tomatoes. A lot of them died, so I was thinking about selling these things at the farmer's market or something, but once I started trying to fill out the greenhouse, I realized I got more room than I had plants, so might as well just keep on growing them. This little guy here is my only producer currently. Now, speaking of isolated seeds, so this came to me labeled as Count Dracula, and so the plant's supposed to be black. The leaves are supposed to be black, and the peppers are supposed to be red, blood red. But hey, I'm grateful for them. I ate a hot pepper pretty much with every single meal, so I spend at least $10 a week on hot peppers. So hopefully these seeds will save me some money over the course of time, you know. So anyway, this is what the garden looks like right now. I took pictures along the way of other stuff I had going on, so maybe I'll show you some pictures through the months starting in December of last year of how these guys were germinated, how I tended to them, and how they started taking over my basement. So this is Ken, and I think I'm going to try to name this YouTube channel VanderWande Gardens, because that was my Grandpa VanderWande on my mom's side. But he planted stuff, my Lynch family planted stuff, and I love hearing the stories from my relatives about how, you know, they would use elephant manure and all sorts of crazy stuff that they'd get from the farms and from the circus. Some people, you know, they were part of the Shriner circus, so they got all sorts of great fertilizers. Some of the fertilizer I got was from my daughter's horse. You know, she goes and rides horses, so they got some 5-year composted manure in here too. So I don't know, it's looking like it's going to be a pretty good season in here. So this is Ken signing out for VanderWande Gardens.